Welcome everyone to today's session on elevating IT and finance collaboration with TBM. I'm Niketa Purandare, Community Manager at TBM Council, and I'm thrilled to see such a great turnout. We had over 300 registrations and folks are still trickling in. I'd like to give a big shout out to our fantastic panel here. They're going to introduce themselves. Tanya Smith, Dixon Kazamale, Matt Zielinski, and Neelam Saini, who bring incredible wealth of leadership experience to this discussion. We are so fortunate to have them today with us. So thank you very much for taking the time to share your insights with our community. Now, this isn't a presentation. There are no slides to be shared. This is an interactive session. So to make this as engaging as possible, I'd love to see your faces. So if you're comfortable and if you're able to, please turn on videos. We want to hear your questions, your challenges, and opinions to make this truly collaborative. But before, I have some housekeeping. So to minimize the background noise, we request that you place yourselves on mute upon entry. But as I said, your video is always welcome. If there are any questions throughout the panel, please use the chat box and drop them there. We will come to them in the order they were received once the panel questions are asked by our moderators to our speakers. And finally, don't worry about taking any extensive notes. This session, as you can see, is being recorded. We will make this available to all our registrants via a YouTube link and also a link in TBM Connect to those that are members. So those of you that are not members of TBM Council, will post a link here in chat. But this is a call for you to sign up for your complimentary TBM Council membership, which will also give you access to today's recording. Here's a quick slide to tell you a little bit about our strategy communities. The circles that you see here on the screen and the bullets within the star here at the bottom, these are collaborative groups of practitioners. These are your peers who meet at different cadences to tackle real-world TBM challenges and share the lessons learned to grow their professional networks. As you know, the mission of TBM Council is to grow and advance the discipline of TBM, but it is also to grow and advance the career and people that are within this community. So the communities are classified under areas of interest and industry verticals. We've got the functional domains like adoption, maturity, cloud and infrastructure, and strategic portfolio management and agile. And as far as industry verticals are concerned, we've currently got active groups for banking, insurance, government, and a smaller group not mentioned here for healthcare. So just a quick introduction for everyone to join at least one of these communities within TBM Connect. Again, we'll drop the link in chat. And very excited to share that a few weeks ago, we launched the data for TBM as a new community for the year 2026. And the two next ones are TBM and Enterprise Architecture, and TBM for AI, AI for TBM. So join us and help shape the conversation. These are special interest groups. Special interest groups are informal groups that are built to spark conversations and build valuable insights. As I said, they are a little less formal than the communities you saw on the previous slides. If there's any group that you don't see listed here, you as a community member are welcome with the support of TBM Council to lead and initiate a group and attract more people to help build content and just best practices around it. Moving on, this is one of my most favorite slides. Just look at how beautiful the slide is. And appreciate the faces you see here, the incredible organizations they represent. This is our CFO of IT work group. They together bring rich industry and geographical diversity. We've got folks spread across North America and Europe represented on this slide, and they're all backed up by deep TBM expertise that fuels the CFO of IT community. So they spend about 2 hours every month. They are the core or the nucleus of this community, and they lead the charge for it. So I want to give a special shout out to our chairs, Andy Moore and Lisa Stalter, for their leadership to this entire team for driving our mission forward. And also a quick shout out to the folks that are bringing this session and the content today to you, our speakers. So if anyone on the call is interested in joining our work group, you could email us at info@tbmcouncil.org or look me up on LinkedIn and send me a quick DM. All right. Going closer to today's session, this slide is a snapshot of the TBM framework. You can find elaborate web pages about this on our webpage. I'll also throw a link here in chat. I just wanted you to know that today's session aligns to TBM outcomes and more specifically to insights and strategy. So when I drop the link in here, you can read more about it. So without further ado, I would now like to hand it over to Neelam to present the topic, our speakers, and deep dive into the panel discussion. And with that, I am going to stop sharing. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, Nikita. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Neelam Saini, your host and moderator for this session. A little bit about myself. I started my career in IT and transitioned to finance in the TBM world about 4 years ago. So since then, I've had the privilege of leading our IT finance team and the TBM office at the County of Santa Clara, located in beautiful San Jose, California. I am on the TBM Council's CFO of IT Strategy Community as well, where I partner with truly brilliant fellow TBM professionals to provide thought leadership and develop assets around IT finance and value management. I'm very excited to host today's conversation. So today we are tackling a challenge many of us know really well. Yeah, IT and finance often feel like they are speaking different languages, even when they are talking about the same project or same things. And in a world where technology drives almost everything, that disconnect isn't just frustrating, it can be a real risk. So our panel together today brings leaders who are using TBM to create that shared language, the shared visibility, and technology investments. So you'll hear how organizations are building cross-functional literacy, how AI and automation are reshaping planning and investment strategy. So if you ever wish for better alignment between IT and finance, this session is for you. I'm excited to dive in. We have a fantastic panel with us, and I'd love for them to introduce themselves. I'll invite each of the panel members to please share your name, your role, and if you can, a brief look at the work you're leading. We'll start with you, Tanya, then move to Dixon, and then Matthew. Go ahead. Tanya, you're on mute. Sorry.
You would think that we know the mute button by now. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are. Sorry about that. It's been a morning of technology struggles, but that's neither here nor there for this group. My name is Tanya Smith. I am the Director of Budget and Finance at the U.S. Department of Commerce's International Trade Administration. And I have been in government for 20 plus years. And I actually am an accountant by trade, but the TBM team for my bureau falls under the finance group at the International Trade Administration. So it's been under me for probably about the past four years. So that makes it very interesting dynamic from my viewpoint.
Right. Dixon, you're on mute.
You're on mute too, Dixon.
Two in a row. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dixon Kasmali. I'm the Assistant Vice President of IT Finance and Analytics at the Standard Insurance Company. We call ourselves the Standard, primarily in the group benefits space, retirement planning, insurance benefits for the workplace. I lead IT finance at the Standard, and I've been doing so for about 7 years now. My team is primarily finance business partners as well as analytics business partners. And my remit here is financial strategy and ownership of technology business management for product and technology investment at the standard. I've been doing TBM since before TBM was actually coined, a very long time. But I'm happy to be here and to share some thoughts with you today.
Hi, everybody. My name is Matt Zielinski. I'm a former CFO of IT at McDonald's Corporation, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and most recently at Hub International. And today I'm on the other side of the coin. I work at a software startup. It is a Google-funded AI startup where I'm an advisor and in go-to-market. Driver AI builds context infrastructure for an agentic SDLC. So what that means for me is we're trying to figure out the cost model for AI because we have to also price our product, and we don't want to put ourselves in a position where our cost model obviously is greater than anything we price. And if you're looking at the headlines, you see what people are going through as these LLMs mature and as tokens become more or less expensive depending upon the mood of the day. It is quite a challenge. But pleasure to be here today.
Thank you. Those are some fantastic introductions. Let's go ahead and jump in. So we'll start with you, Tanya. What are your words of advice on how IT can get a seat at the strategy table?
Let's see. Well, I would say, first of all, being in the government sector, I would say that the first thing to do is to make sure that our IT knows where the strategy table is, and that there is a strategy table indeed to have a seat at. In my organization, we have a leadership group that makes up that particular table, and our IT folks have a seat at the table. But that's where all of our decisions on whether we're meeting our mission, how we're meeting our mission, and then of course IT chimes in to say this is what we're doing to help meet the mission, etc. So that's the first thing, to know that there is a seat and who makes up the body of the table. I think that it is also important for those IT leaders that have a seat at the table to be able to speak the language of the business and not speak just the tech talk, because most of the other people that aren't IT folks don't understand the tech talk. I'm one of those such people, which is, it's ironic that I am the lead over TBM in my organization, but it's important to understand, Neelam, you said it at the very beginning, we don't speak the same language, even if we're talking about the same project. So that's one important thing. And then proactively bring ideas, not just the solutions, and say, hey, this software, this hardware, this is the solution, but bring the ideas on how we can marry those things up and how we can, make more cost-effective decisions instead of just having a whole bunch of, we need this, we need this, we need this, but we haven't actually determined if it's going to solve anything. Then also be able to demonstrate measurable impact. A lot of times, at least in the government sector, the IT does not always seem to have a bunch of transparency. And they're, of course, always, there making impact and everybody knows that they use a laptop, they use a computer, they use, all the different devices. But a lot of times, most of the folks don't realize the impact of what other softwares or hardwares that they're using and what they have on their business outcomes. For the government sector, we don't really have business outcomes, but we're driving mission. And when we're accomplishing mission, that's important as well. So the measurable impacts or the wins is also very important, because honestly, lots of people have trouble tying those things together. So it's important for our IT folks to be able to get people to understand that. And then the last thing I would say is to make sure that they're building credibility as well. Like I said, sometimes there's a lack of transparency from other viewpoints. It's not necessarily the case all the time. But if they understand the goals and can translate them into scalable, future-ready capabilities and can say that in very layman terms for everyone else that needs to understand that, it makes it a lot easier.
Fantastic insights. I can, having come from an IT background into finance, I can relate with everything you just said, especially the transparency, the language not being the same, and building trust. So
Yes.
that's a great way to kick us off here. Let's move to the next question. We'll go to you, Dixon. How is AI and automation shaping your organization right now, and what do you look for from your IT finance leadership when you are evaluating IT investments?
I think it's fair to say that for most organizations, AI is moving everyone from productivity at the margins of structural changes in how we work, cost, and scale our organizations to how it's going to change the operating model. So I think for most insurance companies, the standard being no exception, we're looking at all processes and how we can leverage AI to improve the way we support our mission, which for us is really serving the customers at their time of need. There's the heavy emphasis on empathy in the way we do things at the standard. And AI is giving us opportunities opportunities for us to see how we can do that and scale more efficiently. I would also say that from a change perspective, the governance around technology relative to AI is slightly different. Yes, the name is the same in terms of governance, but in terms of your posture towards ethical AI and the onboarding of AI capabilities at your organization, it's going to look slightly different for AI capabilities because of their far-reaching impacts on your operating model and your tech stack. Not just in terms of expense, to Matt's point earlier, in terms of tokens, but also the way you prioritize your use cases, your posture towards ethics, and the human element. We definitely emphasize human being always in the loop for a lot of the decisions that will touch AI. But from an IT finance perspective or CFO of IT perspective, the need for discipline more than enthusiasm is clear. So we want clear use case prioritization, incremental funding models as opposed to pre-approved, and transparency on both the run cost as well as downstream efficiency impacts. Yes, there's going to be a lot of experimentation, but you quickly need to move into scalable investments and track value realization over time. So I'd say, for IT finance teams, getting very familiar with your cost economics for AI, ensuring that there's a value management framework that backs up how you are looking at each one of the use cases, which ones you're prioritizing, and how you're doubling down investment in those areas. ROI metrics will look very different in different organizations. I've certainly experienced that. It's not the same even within insurance, but when you're looking at, for example, total experience investments, you're investing in the user experience of your customer. You want them to be happy. And tying an ROI to a lot of user experience type of capabilities can be challenging for most organizations. So really the way you govern AI through your governance council establishing clear boundaries on what that looks like, defining metrics for yourselves, and a systematic way from which to measure it. So you might need to plug data into lots of systems that are available in your organization. But ultimately, when you're in front of a leadership team that's asking the question, what value is being generated, you want to be able to back it up with data and customer feedback on the value that's being generated.
Right. Thank you for that. Let's move to the next question. Matt, from your viewpoint, what does IT need to understand about finance to make better operational and investment decisions?
Yeah, so frequently I think that IT looks at finance as the group that tracks spend, does spend management, right? And I really think that finance, if done correctly, is really about making trade-off decisions. Dixon alluded to it earlier, right? The real question is never, is this the good idea, right? I think the real question is this a good idea in comparison to all the other good ideas? And, that could be another IT investment, that could be something outside of IT, that could be doing nothing, right? I think that option often gets forgotten. And so very frequently I will be a part of, senior discussions like all of you. And, we're talking about a new investment. An example fairly recently I heard about was, IT presented some level of drone delivery, right? And the drone was going to fly and drop, I don't know, hamburgers in people's backyards. And there's a room full of C-level executives who all are nodding their head, right, and smiling and like the idea, right? And the group who's presenting leaves the room and they're high-fiving one another in the hallway, and because they think they've gotten the funding. They're asking for $20 million and they think they've gotten it. But in reality, what they've gotten is a reprioritization exercise. What they've gotten is the need to go back to look at the laundry list of things we're working on and say, what's going to go away? And they probably really haven't received $1 of incremental funding. And so there's a big distinction there. And I think it's really important that IT come prepared to have that discussion to get the prioritization right. Obviously come forward with, as Tanya mentioned earlier, translate technology into something that finance can understand, economic outcomes, right? Revenue increase, expense decrease, risk. Talk about when the benefit is going to materialize. Talk about the total cost of ownership. All things everyone on this call is very familiar with. Don't just go in with the one-time cost to achieve, but talk about the switchover costs. Talk about the cost to retire the old thing. And possibly come in with some of that reprioritization in your head already. What can go away if we do drone delivery of hamburgers, which I, as a customer, would not take advantage of, by the way. So at the end of the day, fundamentally, I think IT understands this, but at the end of the day, there really is no money tree. I know that it's the chief financial officer, but she or he probably doesn't have a stash of money on the side waiting to fund drone delivery. So come prepared, be prepared to talk about trade-offs, and come prepared with a lot of the detail necessary just to get through the initial argument around economic outcomes, timing, and total cost of ownership.
Thank you. I think it's a great reminder that doing nothing is an option and it's often forgotten, right? So sometimes no is a perfectly valid answer. All right, let's flip that around a little bit. We'll go to you, Tanya. What does finance need to understand better about IT to be a stronger partner in all of this?
First, I want to say I 100% relate to everything that Matt just said, and I totally agree. But the flip side is that we also have some ownership as finance professionals to the IT folks too, because it's not fair that we always say no, life isn't fair. I get that. But Matt is absolutely 100% correct. a lot of those no's come because, especially in the government sector, the money, there is a certain amount of money. That's it. When I give it out, it's out. I don't have any control over being able to give you some more. I can't say let's run out and do a fundraiser or anything like that. But I do believe that some of the things that we need to do as finance professionals in order to be better partners or more effective partners is to understand the need for whatever the ask is. And Matt said it lovely about being able to come and make it relatable to finance. But yes, oftentimes it's going to be a reprioritization exercise, as he mentioned. So in order to understand that, we also have to understand that for us in the government sector, a big part of our IT cost or spend is contracts. And we have to know that our IT folks depend on, very large third-party vendor contracts. So we need to understand the economies of those contracts and what we're getting for the money. And if on this contract there's something that is included that is also something that is, some other service on some other contract that we're getting, and how we can make sure that we're being most judicious and using the resources as effectively and efficiently as possible. We are also understanding the economies of said contract or all of the contracts. It also helps us understand how everyone can use it. So we don't want to make something so special that it's only useful to one particular group. For example, in the government sector, my bureau itself, the International Trade Administration, we are broken down into 4 smaller business units. Well, I can't spend, 70% of the IT budget on something that is only going to benefit one of those business units. So the reprioritization doesn't always mean just in the IT world, but how it relates to all of the business units and how we can spread it out a little bit more. Maybe there's something that we do that, affects program as opposed to the IT bucket of money, if you would say, that. And then also how those things for us, again, this is very government sector related, but how it affects the future things like our budget formulation process. Like if I can't give you $20 million, today, is it something that we can put into the formulation process to possibly ask for the next fiscal year or the next fiscal year after that, and figuring out what that timeline looks like. So yes, I think having all interested parties participate, hear the pitch, hear the ask, and then figure out what's the best way to get there. And if it's reprioritization, if it's saying no, it's saying no. You're correct, Neelam. Sometimes not doing anything is the best option. If it's reprioritizing, making sure that we're reprioritizing in a way that will benefit the largest group of people, again, in the government sector, so that it's impacting and driving our mission. And while each of our business units have their own particular missions, we have to find a way to make sure it's driving the overall mission of the Bureau. So yeah, I think that breaking down that language barrier is key that we've all mentioned already, but I would think understanding those things is also very key to being effective partners.
Finance often gets the nickname of the Office of No, and that probably comes from, can we have more money? Nope, sorry.
Yeah, I have as many enemies as I have friends, but it's the hat that I wear, so.
Yeah, it is the hat that you wear. It's not you. But thank you for those insights. And that ties very nicely to where we are heading next. In the next question, we'll go to you, Dixon. Where do you see the blind spots? What information about IT investments would help support your organization's growth and priorities?
I'll start with one that I run into quite often, and this is historical throughout my 15 plus years of leading IT finance. I think when we approve business cases or initiatives, one of the most important things that I think always needs to discuss is the relative efficiency of doing it internally versus doing it externally. I think there are environments that are pro, we can do it ourselves with a little external. But I think being honest with ourselves, and I like to use that term often, about the relative efficiency of our capabilities versus external. So from a throughput perspective, that's always a big one that I don't think it's discussed enough when we're talking about multi-year, long-term, big investments. And I think it's a blind spot for a lot of organizations. I think the others around unit economics, demand drivers, and value realization after go live. Many organizations approve business cases, but don't measure whether outcomes were delivered because we're too busy doing everything else. It's the new planning cycle. We're already talking about other new projects. And I think the real one of the reasons I love the TBM framework and the approaches we take is that it is helping us bridge the gap between spend and consumption and performance, as well as business outcomes before, during, and after delivery. We sort of shared a snippet of the framework and the emphasis on the outcomes piece. That section has made me so happy in the last 12 months because it's allowed me to have a lot of conversations around what I just described. Connecting the dots between why we're spending money, the outcomes we're trying to achieve, and consistently revisiting how we're doing to inform trade-off conversations. And I think it likely stems from maturity of a lot of governance practices around technology investments. If you're still focused on projects, what I'm describing is probably similar to what you're experiencing. But if you've moved up the value chain and you're talking about products and outcomes, and you're defining the traceability of IT investment to business outcomes you're trying to drive, you're further along the maturity curve, and these conversations are likely not blind spots for you. But closing the gaps on that, what I often call enterprise value management is so critical as we move forward and mature TBM.
Perfect. I think the one that stuck from that response for me is we are too busy to go back and do a value analysis on what was approved because we've moved on. The next projects have come in. That one resonates, at least in my organization. That is very true. Let's dig into a concrete example on that now, and we'll move to you, Matt. Could you walk us through a technology initiative that delivered clear, measurable outcomes, and what did the business case look like? How was it measured once the project wrapped up?
Yeah, sure. Dixon, by the way, that was a great answer. I couldn't agree more, right? Trying to get to value, minimize value erosion is often very difficult. We as a finance organization build all these business cases, take a big infrastructure outsourcing engagement, right? We spend months, probably hire third parties to come in help us build this business case. Why? It touches our employees, it touches our customers. It's often hundreds of tabs long, and we build it as a precursor to deciding who should do the work and where. And when I get this question about what makes a good business case and how does it become successful, I've often, tagging into what Dixon said, it often doesn't get measured later on in the day, later on in the year. 2 years later, it's completely gone. The people who've built it have moved on. They've gone to another company or retired. So I've really tried to think about what are the critical things necessary, regardless of infrastructure or regardless of initiative type, that really help you get to the value that you're looking for. And to me, it's about building some critical bridges that don't always get built, right? So we've built this amazing business case. We're really proud of it. It's everybody's taken a look at it. It's been approved. Everybody's excited about the ROI, and we move forward, right? It's now time to move to contracting. It's now time, we've gone through an RFP. It's now time to contract what we've decided to do. We've decided to use a third party and not do it internally, right? Well, business cases are built way before the negotiations begin, which means that the levers that were supposed to drive the value from the business case were talked about quite a while ago. And quite frequently, sourcing is unaware. Quite frequently, sourcing may be kind of aware of what's going on, but the business case is very specific. The business case has some clear things that need to be true in order for us to get the value that we want, and they just simply don't make it into the contract, right? Maybe because sourcing didn't know, but also frequently because sourcing knew, but it got traded away for something else, right? Maybe the vendor didn't want to measure something, so they offered innovation in return, right? Seen it happen 1,000 times. Either way, when the levers that you need to be true, the things that you need to be true, don't make it into the contract itself, right? You have value erosion immediately, right? And it doesn't matter how good your spreadsheet it was. It doesn't matter how accurate you were in, laying out your story. It just simply didn't make it into the contract, right? So it's bridge one. Bridge two is, let's say the contract is perfect. You look at it, you're like, fantastic. The business case, it was wonderfully made. Everything I need is in the contract. It then comes time to execute, and the execution team, both maybe internally at your company as well as with the vendor you just negotiated with, really weren't brought into the negotiation. They come to learn that they're responsible for delivering certain things and can't or won't. Most recently, I did a large $180 million software deal where the execution team looked at the terms of the deal and simply said, we don't even come close to measuring those things, right? And the entire business case was blown. So if the levers that you need pulled, whether that's some sort of governance or some sort of reporting cadence, some sort of detail, some sort of consumption metrics, performance metrics, if the vendor can't create them for you, if you don't have the detail to be able to create them yourselves, you can't measure. And if you can't measure, how do you know if you've done well against the business case, right? And so regardless of initiative type, I think building those two bridges are critical. And I've become better at my job by becoming better friends with sourcing, by becoming better friends with vendor management, and actually learning a lot more of what they need to be successful, because I've learned the more successful they are, the more successful I am.
Great insights. That's fantastic. I think everything resonates there. A lot of work kind of gets smoother as you make connections and understand the other entities involved, like vendor and management, what their processes look like, what their constraints look like, what their considerations look like. So wonderful insight. Now let's shift to how teams actually build that shared understanding. We'll go to you, Tanya. What activities have been most effective in building cross-functional literacy? Things like job shadowing, embedded analytics. Can you speak to that?
Sure. Let me just start with saying there's probably no one way. There's more than one way to skin a cat in everything that you do. And actually, there was a question in the chat that I started to respond to that this will have a lot to do with as well. And I will still respond to it. I just didn't respond to it yet. But first of all, I think that it is important to build a team or have a team that is, they're invested in success all around on both the IT side and the finance side. And everybody, we've already said, like I said before, a million times already today, that, you have to figure out a way to speak a common language. So I think that is also key, but you have to make sure that that particular group is invested in seeing mission success for everybody. We can, here in ITA, we don't necessarily do job shadowing, but we do have representatives from each of the business units that come together. And so they don't have to rotate across the units because there is somebody from each of the units. But they come together to discuss the IT budget, all the things that impact them, so that it's centrally related. Because the finance world, we're on the support side of the mission, as opposed to the program or other business units. They're on the programmatic side of the mission, and then IT sort of crosses both worlds, but technically speaking, they sit more on the support side, but they're not just support mission folks. And I think that that's also key. So yes, making sure that everyone that is involved has a seat at that particular table, making sure that they're invested in mission success across the board. We have to do things like, we have to bring in other job functionalities like economists and data analysts, and make sure that they're connecting with the different parts of ITA. This is all within ITA, to make sure that they're embedded within our trade team, so that they can understand what our trade teams need. And then when we're talking about this, they can give that input. This isn't going to work for the people that are out in the field doing the work, or it is. That kind of conversation. We need cross-functional support. So just like in ITA, TBM falls in the finance shop, my shop. It does not do that everywhere. It's a very rare occasion. I know that it is in other places, but it's not everywhere. Is not in the finance. A lot of times TBM is in the IT side of things. So being able to have folks, like there's folks on my team that don't know budget, like the stuff that I'm really, really good at. And I have to find ways to work with them and talk to them so that I can understand what they're telling me about IT, the cost pools and the towers and all of the different tax parts of the taxonomy of TBM. But they make that simple for me because they understand where we meet each other where we both are, I guess is a good way to say that. Mm-hmm. Even down to, when we're doing briefings, to have, internal briefings before we have to actually give the briefings, make sure that those are going to resonate with the audience that they're intended for. And if we're giving demos, we have dashboards that support all types of our IT spending in different slices and dices. But also then to have shared playbooks. Like when we have something that works, let everybody know. And if there is a, standard operating procedure that works for one thing, then let's use it for everybody else. I'm a firm believer in not recreating the wheel on every little thing. So all sharing of information, if it works, is great to me. But also understanding where all of the shared costs are so that IT doesn't have to do it by themselves.
Mhm.
And I think, yeah, that's the stuff that we do at ITA.
Great, thank you. That sets up for our last question. This one is going to be joint for you, Dixon and Matt. For this final one, I'd love to hear from both of you. What metrics matter most at the CFO level when you're looking at technology spend and investment?
Dixon, you want to go
Right.
first?
Sure. I've spoken about this and I've layered it into my answers earlier. How important the value management is to me in terms of how I look at tech spend. But at the outset, I focus on the amount of spend that's going to products or services and value streams. Because if we're investing and we're doubling down in those areas, that's where I want to see tech investment flowing. I pay attention to unit cost economics and trends over time and what that looks like during an implementation and after. I pay attention to the run versus grow and transform mix within the organization. Ours is in three layers. We're managing legacy, we're doing digital transformation, and mergers and acquisitions. So segmenting across those three, I definitely use the same approach. IT is very capacity oriented, so capacity utilization and demand signals matter to me, and wrapping it all up with sort of the value piece. How much has been realized versus the business case? How are we tracking? And what decisions are we making to accelerate investment in areas that are proving to have traction versus decelerating? So I look at things in those dimensions to really gauge from a metrics perspective where we are and what we're trying to do. What are your thoughts, Matt?
Great answer. Great answer. I had a list and he took almost all of them. So fantastic. No, genuinely great answer. And I was going to start with, business value per dollar. Couldn't agree more with you there. And at Driver AI, we lead with that, trying to sell. And I only tell you that to encourage you to force your vendors to do that as well. The two that I would bring up on top of what Dixon brought up is, forecast accuracy and spend predictability. It comes down to credibility. It's hard to go in to have those funding discussions, or as we mentioned earlier, incremental funding discussions when you're 30 million under plan, and you're always 30 million under plan, right? The credibility of being under plan can be just as painful. Credibility hit of being under plan can be just as painful as the credibility of hit of being over plan. And so we try to forecast accuracy and why. Like, what is the challenge? What is causing us to be successful or miss by so much? Sometimes it's education. Oftentimes it's people are sandbagging, and we have to try to get underneath that. I'd say currently what I'm seeing a lot, which I didn't always see in the past, was vendor concentration. I'm in a lot of conversations where CFOs and other business leaders are asking, why are there so many vendors? Why so many logos? I think it gets down to how can you manage this all? I don't know that it's necessarily tied to spend. I think it's tied to value. I think it's tied to your capacity and just ability to deliver. And there are good reasons to have multiple vendors doing something. I'm firmly aware of that. But when it's across everything, and you have 22 vendors who provide, contingent workforce resources, folks start to scratch their heads over time, right? So it's come prepared if you see that proliferation of vendor logos across IT to talk about how that ties into the sourcing strategy and how that sourcing strategy ties into the IT strategy. Because candidly, when you have that many vendor logos, it's just simply sometimes doesn't.
Great. Thank you all. This was a really, really rich discussion, and I appreciate each of you sharing your experiences and perspectives. I know we are kind of close to the tail end here, but we'd love to open it up for questions here from our attendees. If you've not already dropped it in chat, please go ahead and do so, or you can just unmute and ask, and we will try to get through as many as we can.
Neelam, there are questions in chat. Do you want to look at the first one from Hamid?
Yeah, let me bring up my chat.
I think Hamid is asking, how do you respond to your IT departments when they ask, do you have any money available so that they can submit an appropriate request? I think on this particular question, I think if you're managing demand and capacity the right way, and you're prioritizing the right way, one of the things I always see as a hallmark of a good IT finance leader is the ability to know where the dollars are in terms of extra cushion, and where they are timing benefits associated with, I haven't spent as much here. Where can we reprioritize? Dynamic reprioritization is important for IT finance to really master, because IT is always going to ask, I need money for this, I need money for that. And a good IT finance resource bakes that into the financial planning process and is able to dynamically solve those kinds of problems by taking from Susie to fund Ted when those needs come up. And that's historically how I've done it.
Okay. Then next one, I don't know if we can get through all of them. We are at 8:53, so 7 minutes. But if we can't get to them, I believe, Nikita, we were going to try to take these and maybe publish the responses on our blog.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll read the next one. As a part of the trade-off decision, should we, IT, consider non-IT business unit initiatives? How can we do that? Anyone like to take that? Looks like we lost Tanya. Sorry.
Can you hear me? I'm back.
Okay.
I dropped off, but I'm back, I hope.
Oh, okay. Now we got you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I was gonna try to respond to this question, and I think it depends. I think that it depends is the answer. It depends on how your structure is set up. For how it is in the government sector might be different than in the private industry, the healthcare industry, whatever. But I think that depending on your setup, the trade-off, yes, is the answer. The trade-offs can be considered in the non-IT side of your business, regardless of what your structure is. But whether IT folks are the ones that can consider those trade-offs is the question.
Yep.
So I think that depending on your makeup, the answer is absolutely yes. Other trade-offs can certainly be and considered, and that's what I was trying to say. And I think the second question that I answered. But I don't think that your IT folks are the ones that are going to be able to make those considerations. But that goes back to the partnership between IT and finance.
Great response. The next question is, how are you measuring and attributing AI token consumption by user, role, product, project, or business capability? Second part, are tokens modeled as consumption-based services, shared enterprise overhead, or unit cost drivers in TBM?
when we're selling into companies and having discussions around token consumption, it's always been at the product level for what it's worth. The product team then determines how to allocate it from there. But what we see for mature companies who are trying to really automate their SDLC, those product teams are mature enough to be able to make their decision at that level. The conversation is always about consumption. The conversation is always about, and candidly, when we're interfacing with a firm trying to sell, it warms my heart. We're always running into IT finance, and we're always running into their FinOps organizations, because these organizations tend to be the ones taking this on. And so it's a natural overflow from cloud into AI. And I can't claim to say that I've seen it all. I've only seen a handful of situations, but companies are a lot more prepared for this discussion because of their investment in IT finance and FinOps.
Yeah, as someone who owns an IT finance with FinOps, I would say partnership with your cloud governance team on how you structure subscriptions and align them to product, extremely important in order to avoid some of the disconnects between consumption and the cost of it all, and getting down into the weeds and talking about tokens. If you're budgeting at the consumption level, at the cost level, it's really the segmentation of your subscriptions that will really help you manage that cost.
Awesome. I think we can do one more last one. I hear a lot of examples of finance saying no. Can you explain how we can work to get the business to say no and control the prioritization?
I guess it depends on whose money is being spent. That's where my head goes. If it's IT's money to spend, it's always easier for the business to say yes, right? So one is to flip that dynamic. Easier said than done. I know.
Yes. Yes. Okay, maybe we can get one quick one, next one, and then we'll wrap it up. How different would these discussions and decisions be for IT versus other departments, say marketing? So it's tied to the previous one.
My response to that is one, demand funnel in the enterprise. One thing I loved about my time at McDonald's, where Matt also worked, was that leadership teams gathered every year and looked at the demand all in one room, looked at it all. And the enormity of the challenge in terms of what people are asking and the limited capacity for the organization to actually fund all that was very clear. So it tended to be a sort of a steering conversations around what portions we will dedicate towards functions that are not related to the business, to revenue, finance, HR, marketing, to keep them up to date, keep currency going, and not necessarily ignore them. But one demand funnel helps you see that very clearly, and define rules.
Yeah, I'll add my closing comment here. When we have the one demand funnel, at least for IT funded projects, and where IT kind of drives these projects. But we're just starting to get to a point where we are saying, okay, you want us to do this, what gets to be deprioritized, because it's the resource pool is finite. As a public sector organization, we can't always outsource work, and so you want us to take this on, fine. What are you willing to put on the back burner while we work on this other new high priority? So with that, I'm going to say thank you to everyone who joined today. Huge thank you to you, our panelists, for such a insightful conversation. And I hope everyone who joined is leaving us with ideas that you can take back to your team, and rethinking how you frame value and get more out of your TBM practice. We appreciate your time and engagement, and hope to see you at our future sessions. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.